everyone. Welcome to day 7 of Mrs. Limpin's reading group. Today we're going to continue on with our story, The Graduation of Jacob Moon. We're going to read chapter 2. Remember to do Quizlet set number 3 and your comprehension quiz. So before we begin, I want to let you know that the backgrounds I've decided for this video are going to be all nature because I don't know about you, I like nature a lot. So every day we're going to have a little bit of a different setting to try to be more positive. So here we go with chapter 2. Okay. Thor, God of Thunder. My name is Jake Moon. No middle name, and it's not Jacob. It's just Jake, and it's just Moon. And I like it pretty well, which isn't bragging because I had nothing to do with it at all. My grandfather named me. And okay, I know that normally it's the parents who name the kid, but my mother wasn't exactly in solid frame of mind when I was born. In fact, her thinking was muddled. She never even told my father she was going to have a baby. Mom met him in her 3rd year of college. They went together for over a year, she said. And then on the anniversary of their first date, he asked her out to dinner. He told her he had something really important to ask her that night. She was positive that he was going to give her an engagement ring. That afternoon, she went to the bank and withdrew enough money to get herself an expensive manicure. She told him that she wanted her hands to look fashion magazine perfect when he put the ring on her finger. The trouble was, when her father came to pick her up, he was wearing cut-off jeans and a t-shirt, and instead of taking her to a big fancy restaurant, he drove her to Arby's and ordered 2 beef and cheddars. Ma was still holding out hope, though. She said she almost fainted when they finally finished eating and he reached for her hand. Then he held it in his, real romantic and all, and he asked if he could please date her roommate. The next day, my mother packed up everything she owned and drove to stay with a friend of hers in Connecticut. 3 weeks after she got there, she found out I was on the way. She didn't tell my grandfather, not right away, I mean. My mother has always been the independent type, and she wanted to make sure she could support us before she let anyone know. She made up all sorts of excuses not to go home to visit for all those months. She worked at Denny's right until the week I was born, and 2 weeks after that she went right back to work again. If I had been a normal baby, it might have turned out okay too. But I was one of those mixed up kinds of babies who cry all night and sleep all day. So after 2 solid weeks of listening to me scream, my mother was a walking bundle of raw nerves. Unfortunately, on her first afternoon back at Denny's, some old woman started chewing her out pretty good because there was a hair in her pie. It's one of those lessons in life we can all learn from, I think. Never complain about a hair in your pie when your waitress is teetering on the brink of insanity. Ma picked up the plate, turned it over on the woman's head, and said, "What a coincidence! Now there's a pie in your hair." She was fired before she could take off her apron. That night she put me in the car, and the 2 of us drove 4 hours to Skelly's house in Pennsylvania. That's my grandfather's nickname, by the way, Skelly. His real name is Sherman Kelly Moon, but when he was a kid he hated the Sherman part. So he started signing his name S. Kelly Moon, and he ended up as Skelly. Anyhow, Ma still hadn't thought of a name for me when we moved into Skelly's. That is, unless you consider Little Screamer from Hell a proper name. But from the first second he saw me, my grandfather started calling me Jake. So that's what I was christened. And the 3 of us have lived together in this house ever since. Skelly helped raise me while my mother went back to school. He doesn't remember any of this now, not even my name. But I'll always be grateful to him for calling me something normal. It's important to have a name you like, I think, especially when you're a kid. Life is tough enough for a kid without having to stand up at your desk on the first day of school and pronounce that your name is Heidi or Prunella or something. There was a kid in my 1st grade class named Thorbert Fiddler. Even in 1st grade, we knew this kid's parents had really dumped on him with that one. He looked exactly like you would expect a Thorbert Piddle to look like, skinny, with thin, mousy brown hair and huge glasses. It's a theory of mine that most people grow up to look like their name. Like, in my opinion, if your name is Brunhilde, you can pretty much forget about ever becoming Miss America. Miss America is for people named Tara or Heather or Chantel. If your name is Brunhilde, you're probably going to drive a cement truck. In the case of Thurbert Pidler, the best he could have hoped for was to be good at chess, I think. But because of my grandfather, Thorbert lucked out. In first grade, Skelly volunteered to be our room mother, which I thought might be weird, but Skelly could bake the most delicious chocolate cupcakes you ever put in your mouth, and when he brought them to school, he'd let me pass them out. So, on cupcake days, I was always the most popular kid in the room. As for Thorbert Pidler, Skelly simply refused to call him Thorbert. Instead, whenever he came to our class, he'd call out in his great booming voice, "Where's Thor, god of thunder?" Then he'd find Thorbert, hoist him onto his shoulders, and carry him around the room. My grandfather is a big man, 6 feet 4, almost, so sitting on his shoulders could make you feel like a king of the planet. And if you were also imagining yourself to be Thor, god of thunder, well, all I'm saying is that the combination of the two experiences could sincerely improve a little kid's self-image. Like in Thor's case, 3 or 4 weeks after Skelly started carrying him around, he stopped crying in class. By the end of October, his hair started to come in thicker. By mid-November, Thor's voice had gotten loud enough for him to have a speaking role in our class play about the first Thanksgiving. I still remember how straight and tall he stood on the stage as he loudly declared, I am a cranberry, Squanto." Skelly just had that kind of effect on people. He had a way of believing in you that made you want to believe in yourself. Like when I was in second grade, for instance. My main goal in life was to do 3 pull-ups in PE. I wasn't very strong back then, but I was pretty sure 3 pull-ups would be enough to stop the kids from calling me noodle arms when I dangled from the high bars. I swear, though, no matter how hard I pulled and grunted and kicked my legs, I could never lift myself more than an inch or two. It was frustrating as anything. One day, I strained so hard I wet my pants a little. No one saw, but that night at dinner, I took one look at the noodle casserole on my plate and started to cry. After a lot of prodding, my mom finally got me to admit the truth. I was a weakling, a total wuss, I told her. But as Mom reached out to hug me, Skelly stood up from the table, took me by the hand, and led me outside to the backyard tree. He pointed to a strong, thin branch and lifted me up. "Grab a hold," he told me. "No, Skelly, I can't do this," I whined. The second I grabbed the branch, Skelly slipped his hands underneath the bottom of my shoes, and with something solid to push against, I automatically began to pull. Skelly urged me on. "Attaboy, Jake, attaboy." Slowly my chin rose higher and higher until it finally touched the branch. My grandfather let out a whoop. Then he grabbed me and swung me all around in the air. And I mean, even while I was twirling, I knew that I hadn't really done it on my own or anything. But sometimes a shallow little victory is all the victory you need to keep going. Because the next night, I wanted to go out there again. And the night after that, too. And then, pretty soon, working on pull-ups after dinner became a routine with Skelly and me. It was just getting dark the night in April when I went up for my 3rd pull-up and made it. While I was still hanging there in midair, Skelly hugged me so tight, a little whoosh of air came out of my mouth. "You're really something, Jake Moon," he said in my ear, and I thought I would burst open with pride. It must have been the same way Thor Pidler felt when he belted out that he was a cranberry that Thanksgiving in first grade. You don't forget amazing moments in your life like that, and you don't forget the people who helped cheer you on either, which is why I wasn't surprised at all when, in 3rd grade, Thor showed up at our front door to say goodbye to my grandfather. His dad had been transferred out of state, and while Thor was packing for the move, he ran across an old picture of himself sitting on Skelly's shoulders. And he wanted Skelly to have it to remember him by. It was a rainy Saturday in November when he came by. The reason I know it was November is because it was the same month that Skelly was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. You've probably heard of Alzheimer's by now, and And that's terrible, incurable brain disease that destroys a person's memory and his ability to think straight, or even to have a simple conversation. Back then, though, I mostly just thought that Alzheimer's was a disease that made old people forget where they put their car keys. And since I was already used to Skelly being a little absent-minded, no big deal, I thought. Wrong. Very big deal. After he was diagnosed, Skelly's normally calm personality turned totally inside out. Ma said it was because he was scared to death about what was happening to him. Now, if he lost his car keys, he would storm around the house looking under everything in sight, trying to find them, even though that made no sense. I mean, like the microwave oven or Ma's ficus plant in the dining room. If he still couldn't find them, he would blame it on me. What'd you do with them, Jake? Where'd you put them? From now on, you leave my stuff alone. You hear? I didn't take them, Scal, I yelled back. I didn't touch your stupid keys. But nothing I said ever undid his anger, and I'd almost always end up in tears. Anyhow, it definitely didn't help matters for Skelly to open the front door that rainy Saturday morning and see Thorbert Piddler standing on the porch, because I'm telling you right now, he didn't have a clue who the kid was. Not even when Thorbert said he was Thorbert. My mother and I were both standing there when it happened, and I admit we overreacted a little. Ma yanked Thor into the house by his arm, and I started saying his name over and over again, real loud, like if I said it long enough or loud enough, it might jog Skelly's memory. Thorbert! It's Thorbert! Look! Thorbert Fiddler! It's Thorbert! When it still didn't register in Skelly's face, Ma tried as nice as she could to help him along. Thor, Dad, she said. You remember Thor, don't you? From first grade? You were room mother back then, remember? This is Thor, God of Thunder. Without any warning, Skelly started to yell. Lord, you two! You don't need to keep saying his name. I'm not crazy yet, am I? I remember Thor. How could I not remember Thor? My face heated up in embarrassment. I laughed stupidly. Poor Thor. All he wanted to do was get the heck out of there. He shoved the picture into Skelly's hand and started backing towards the door. Yeah, well, I just came to bring this to you, Mr. Moon, he said. I just wanted you to have that picture there, okay? I found it in my closet, and I thought maybe you'd like it to have it, but if you don't, it's okay too. As soon as my grandfather looked at the picture, his face softened. It was in a silver picture frame with a blue velvet ribbon tied around it. You could tell that Thor had tried to tie it himself. Skelly bent down and put his hands on Thor's shoulders. We had fun back then, didn't we, son? He said. He smiled a little, then he stood back up and turned away. Early the next morning, when it was still dark outside, I woke up to go to the bathroom. On my way back, I heard a noise coming from the living room. I tiptoed down the hall and peeked my head around the corner. Skelly was sitting across the room in his favorite rocking chair, rocking in the dark. As I watched, he stopped rocking and clicked on his flashlight. He shined the light at something he was holding on his lap, looked at it a minute, then clicked off the light and started rocking again. He did this 4 or 5 times before I finally figured out what was going on. Skelly was shining the flashlight on the picture of Thor, trying to remember. I went in. Embarrassed, Skelly quickly pushed everything from his lap to the floor. What are you doing up? He said. Instead of answering, I walked over to the couch and grabbed the Afghan that was hanging across the back. Then I climbed into his lap and covered us both with a blanket. I buried my face in his chest. It's cold in here, I said quietly. Skelly circled his arms around me and held me close as we rocked back and forth. That's the end of chapter 2. Okay, go ahead and do your Quizlet and make sure you complete your comprehension quiz in complete sentences. All right, have a great day. Miss you all. See you soon. Bye.